So we have been going through this wisdom literature, the book of Ecclesiastes, and we covered so many things as Solomon, who lived the life, and he's trying to tell us how we are to live and what are the best ways that we should live. And today we are in chapter 7. And we have titled this sermon, Living in the House of Mourning. Living in the house of mourning, or sometimes we need to visit the house of mourning. So I remember growing up, or even now, you know, when I left St. Vincent, so my sister would always, when I talked to her, she was like informing us of who died, right? So she always keeping us up to date as to who died. And one thing about her is that she loves to go to funeral. And we wonder, why do you like to go to funeral? Most of the time, you go to funeral if someone is close to you, someone, in the church died, and you go to the funeral. And maybe some people go to the funeral of someone who, not necessarily close to them, but someone who is a public figure, and maybe that person did something for them or meant something for them. And so if a president died or some one who is of status in the world, we tend to go to the funeral. But if an ordinary person died, we don't know the person, we definitely most likely will not go to the funeral. But she likes to go to funeral, and we will wonder, why do you like to go to funeral? And could it be that funeral can teach us something? And so she goes to the funeral of people she knows, yes, or who she knew, but some that she didn't know too well. She would go to those funerals. And now when I'm reading Ecclesiastes, now I'm getting an idea of visiting funeral homes and visiting the house of mourning is probably a good thing. What about death, that we should love to go or in essence want to go to a place of mourning? We try to avoid these places. We don't like to think about death. But here in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, Paul is giving us a bunch of wisdom. Solomon is giving us a bunch of wisdom literature. And we can't cover all of these in the sermon. So we're just going to stick with just a couple, or basically one of them, basically. And so he said in verse 1, a good name is better than precious ointments. All right, a good name is better than precious ointments, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. Now, Solomon, what are you telling us? Totally, I can agree with your first statement, that a good name is better than precious ointment. So a good name is priceless. When we have a good name, then people, when your name is mentioned, that there's some things about you that comes out. Your good name, what Solomon is referring to here, is not just a good name, I'm sure you understand that, of having a very nice name, right? Like Webster Sterling, right? Very distinctive, right? That kind of thing. He's not talking about that, of course. But what he's talking about is your character. He's talking about your reputation. When someone mentions your name at work, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Is it someone who's always late? Or someone who is there on time? Is it someone who is honorable? Or someone who is questionable? And so he says a good name is better than precious ointment. And so what is it about ointment, perfume that he's referring to? Well, ointment represent a time of joy. And so when the Bible talks about ointment or perfume, he talks about joy. Ointment is also referring to prosperity. That when you have oil, you have prosperity. You remember the woman didn't have food in her house, and all she had was jars, and Elijah told her to borrow, and then the oil kept falling over. And then he told her to go and sell. Right, so she formed a business right there. So oil in this reference is referring to prosperity. So here Solomon is mixing a good name with joy, prosperity, and reputation, and these are good. But he's basically saying that if you have a good name, then you have something that is more valuable than joy, something that is more valuable than prosperity, because a good name represents your character. It represents who you are. And so having this good name is important. And I'm sure that most of us have no problem with this. But what we may have a problem with is the second part of the verse. All right? The second part of the verse. Let's go back here because he is saying that a good name is better than precious ointment. We understand that because your reputation can take you a long way that money can't take you. But then he mixed that with on the day of death than the day of one's birth. Now, how is that possible? How is the day of death precious than one's birth? I mean, so he is linking it. You know, good name is better than this, and then even a good name is better than birth and the day of death. But then he says a good name, the day of death is better than the day of birth. So in other words, your death, your death day, or the day that you die, the day that someone's died, he's saying is better than your birthday. We don't celebrate death day. I mean, the God, Solomon said, I mean, Psalms, David said that teach us how to number our days. And basically, numbering your days is you live yesterday, so you have one less day to live. And if we were to, let's suppose we had some stones, right? And these stones represent maybe, let's say, 70 years that God has given us to live. And if every day we take one stone and we throw it away, then I have 69 days left. Yes, and then 68, and we start counting down. That may give us a better appreciation of life, because sometimes we live as if we have unlimited time here on this earth. But teach us how to number our days. But Solomon is invoking a disturbing theory here into a philosophy, into his teaching. Now think about the day of birth, right? The day of birth is a time of celebration, and people are smiling. You prepare for the day of birth. You prepare to have this loved one come into the family. And so parents are rejoicing, and they're preparing the crib and the baby's room, and it is a time of rejoicing. And so fathers and mothers are celebrating the birth of this loved one, the birth of this precious baby. But yes, Solomon says that the day of dying is better than the day of being born. How is that possible? How is that possible? Well, here we're trying to understand, because Solomon, he's a wise man. And so, first of all, we have to believe what he's saying is true. All right? So at the day of birth, you have potential. The person as birth, what can you say about them? All you can say is that, well, they resemble their father, they resemble their mother. You can talk about how many pounds, the way, you can talk about their features, but you can't say anything concrete about this child that is born. So this child has potential. They can do this, they can be that, but there is no way of knowing how this child is going to turn out. Compare that to the day of death. The day of death is about fulfillment. You have lived a life, and now you have fulfilled that part of your life. Potential is inferior to fulfillment. And so you look at people who have potential, people who are built with potential, students who have potential but do not use their potentials. But when it comes to fulfillment, you have done something in your life, and now people can look back at your life and they can say, well, this person lived a well-fulfilled life. You see, at Jesus' birth has potential. And so the question has been asked many times, which event is more important? Which event should we more celebrate? Is it the birth of Jesus, or is it the death of Jesus? You see, Jesus was born with potential of saving mankind from their sins. But if Jesus did not go to the cross, then his birth would have been in vain. There would have been no salvation. Jesus would have been just a good man who lived upon this earth, and he would be no better than Muhammad. But because he died, and because he was resurrected, there was fulfillment in his life. So what Solomon is saying here is that it is not just good to be born with potential, but if that potential is wasted, if that potential is not put to use, then what is the purpose of your existence? So the day of death is when you look back at a person's life, and when we are faced with death in our own life, and we look back at it, and we can say, yes, I have done my path. I have fulfilled my purpose here on this earth. So the day of your death is a better teacher than the day of your birth. This is basically what Solomon is saying. The day of your death is a better teacher than the day of your birth. Why? How is that? Let's go on to see what Solomon is saying. Better, he says, to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. For what is the end of all men? And the living will take it to heart. Better it is, he says, to go to the funeral home. Better it is, he said, to go to the graveside where people are mourning and people are crying, than to go to the party, go to a feast where people are laughing and having fun. Why, Solomon? Why is that better? Because what Solomon is saying, the coffin preaches better sermons than the crib. The coffin preaches better sermons than the crib. You see, a baby in the crib, and we think about what could be and what they will do in their lives. But here, when we see someone lying in a casket, when we see someone lifeless there, as we go to the house of mourning, death is looking us into the face and is calling us aside and saying, if you were here in this coffin, what would they be saying of you? You know, every time I go to a funeral, I imagine what will people be saying about me? What would I be remembered for? And so the coffin is a better preacher. Because the coffin is saying, as you go to the house of mourning and you witness death and you stare death right in his face, that is speaking to you and saying, are you ready? If I should come for you when your appointed time is here, are you ready? What about your soul salvation? Are you ready to meet your God? Are you ready for judgment if death should come your way? You see, when a child is born, we are not thinking about that. We are not thinking about death. But here at the house of mourning, death hold us by the shoulder and pull us aside and remind us that life here on earth is short. Death reminds us that the laughter and all of the pleasures that we have is going to come to an end. Death says, are you ready? Are you ready? Verse 3, it says, sorrow is better than laughter. Sorrow is better than laughter. For by a sad countenance, the heart is made better. I mean, Solomon, what are you saying? Solomon, sorrow is better than laughter. How can that be? How can sorrow be better than laughter? And how can a sad countenance make the heart better? Many of us are running from sorrow. We are not going trying to get sorrow. We are going trying to get laughter. And look at all of the comedy shows that we have and the late night shows. And people are paying for laughter. People are paying people to make them laugh. You go to shows to make you laugh. But here Solomon is saying that sorrow is better. But how is it better? What do you mean that sorrow is better? I love to laugh, as you may have noticed. And psychologists in laughter is good, and even Proverbs say that a merry heart, a merry heart does well for the soul. So what Solomon is actually saying here is that sorrow is a more effective teacher than laughter. Think about it. What do you actually learn about yourself during laughter? What do you learn about life during laughter? What changes do you make in your life after you have paid to go to a comedy show? Or you have paid to watch a movie, a comedy? What changes have you made in your life? You see, what Solomon is really saying here is that the aspect of laughing, which is good, there's nothing wrong with laughter. But if you want to make changes in your life, if you want something to spur something within you, to reveal who you are, you have to go to sorrow. You see, there's some teachers who are good, right? So some teachers, if you want to get an A, in college, you have these professors, and of course some are more difficult than others, right? And so some teachers, professors, to get an A with them is easy. You show up to class, you do the work, you get an A. Some you have to go beyond and do extra. However, there are some, remember I was taking this class in the seminary, and the students were saying about this particular professor, do not take him. He is difficult. People don't normally get. It's very unlikely for you to get an A in this class. And if you have a choice, but I didn't have a choice. I had to take him because that was part of my track. So I had to take him. I had no choice but to take him. But what I realized, yes, he was difficult. But the style of his teaching, you learn a lot from. You learn. And so sometimes in school, students have to choose. What do you want? Do you want to learn or do you want the A? And sometimes they're not mutually exclusive all the time, but sometimes that's the case. And so you want to laugh, and nothing is wrong with laughter. But if you want somebody or something or some experience to give you a life lesson so that you can prepare yourself to better handle situations in life, then you have to go to sorrow. Sorrow is where, when we go through these pain in our lives, that's when we make changes. You see, laughter may have its place, but sorrow is superior to making the heart better. Sorrow, see, we look at the pandemic that goes on in our world today. Look at that COVID-19 and what it's done to society. But many of us are better because of it, because we made changes to our lives. The sorrow of being isolated have caused us to value family more, so we spend more time with our family. Many of us have changed our health habits and the way we eat because of the pain of the pandemic. But if we were going through life as normal and we laugh in our way to the bank, we think that everything is all right, and we just continue, and therefore we do not learn life lessons from laughter. But when a sorrow knocks at our door and we go through some pain in our lives, then we are forced to make changes. Then we are forced to make adjustments in our life, because sorrow is superior in making decisions. As a matter of fact, Paul says in Hebrews, now no chastising seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Chastising, sorrow, pain, mourning, they don't seem to bring any joy at the moment. At the present time, it seems painful, and we are going through rough times in our lives, and we find no joy. But Paul said, nevertheless, afterwards, it brings forth peaceable fruits, teaching us how to be righteous, teaching us how to do right if we are able to be trained by it. Not everyone is able to be trained by it. That's why Solomon said it's better to go into the house of mourning. So laughter provides temporary reprieve from the burdens of life. And so we get tired from the burdens, and so we put on late night comedy and we laugh our way out. But what happens? You see, but sorrow encourages us to make positive changes. That's the power of sorrow. Living in the house of mourning is positive. This is what Solomon says in verse 4 to 6. He says, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth, means laughter, the house of pleasure. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the songs of fools. For like the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. The reason why Solomon is saying that the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, as we live our life day after day, we remember that there comes a time when we are going to die. There comes a time when we are going to go through pain. But the fool is thinking that everything will be a better roses. The fool is thinking that every day he will wake up in the morning laughing his way out. But the problem is, as Solomon says here, for like the cracking of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. Have you ever set fire to wood, and you use these small branches? So you set in a fire. It's difficult for you to light a big plank of wood, but you take the twigs from the trees and from the branches, those small little things, and they are easily lit, and they as you light them, they burst into flame big. But how long does the flame last? You put it under the pot to cook. It gives you big flame, but in a few seconds, few minutes, it's out. It's gone. It's no more. So Solomon is saying the laughter of the fool is just like that. You laugh for a while, and then the laughter is gone. And the same pain and sorrow that you're trying to mask reveals itself again. Reveals itself again. But the wise man, his heart is in the house of the mourning, because he realized, yes, that there are some good lessons to be learned from death. There are some good lessons to be learned from pain. There are good lessons to be learned from suffering. You talk to successful people in their lives, and they will tell you that the most important life lessons for them came from their time of sorrow and time of pain. Invention in the world. Most of the invention came from time of inconvenience. And people try to look for better ways to live. And so we are to embrace mourning, because the Bible says that when you mourn, you will be comforted. When you mourn, you will be comforted. The Bible says in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 4, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. The word blessed means happy. And you may say, how can I be happy? How can I be happy when I'm mourning? How can I be happy when I'm crying? As a matter of fact, studies have shown, actually, that crying is actually good for you. That when you cry, there's certain, the way our bodies are made, that some of the things that are released that gives, that it helps your body. Crying also is good for helping you relieve grief and pain. And so the Bible says, blessed, happy are those who mourn. Why are you mourning? I don't know what you may be mourning about today. There may be sorrows in your life. There may be pain and circumstances beyond your own belief. There may be a health problem. Maybe there is something in your home. There's something on the job that you are mourning. But the Bible says that blessed are those who mourn, because you see, when you mourn, you realize that this thing is more than you can handle. When you mourn, you are saying, God, I can't take this all by myself. I can't handle it all on my own. But thanks be to God that the Bible says that you shall be comforted, because there is a God who is standing right beside you, and he hugs you and he said, come, my child, I feel your pain, I feel your sorrows. I am here to comfort you. Blessed are those who hunger now. Luke chapter 6 and verse 21. Blessed are those who hunger now, for you shall be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. What do you prefer? I mean, a matter of fact, Solomon said, the end is better than the beginning. The end is better than the beginning. And so, kids love when their birthday arrives. You know, Serena is counting down her birthday, which is on March 30th, and she starts counting down the days. How long before her birthday arrives? Can we count down the days to our death? What will it be like? Where would you be? What would your heart be like? What will people say about you? People are planning their funeral, and you can pre-plan your funeral. You can pre-plan it, pre-plan everything of how you want it, where you're going to be buried, and who you want at your funeral, who you don't want to be there. And these wishes are carried out. But I'm not talking about that kind of planning. I'm talking about planning the end of your life, that you know that your calling and your election is sure. You know that if you should die tonight, that you have a right relationship with God, that you will be among those who will be in the first resurrection, who will be caught up to meet God in the air. I'm talking about planning your life in such a way that you will be able to laugh now, laugh later, even though you're experiencing pain now. Because as David said, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. You see, in the house of mourning, yes, we are all living in the house of mourning, where we have sorrow and we have pain, we have anguish. But the good thing about it is that life lessons are being taught. We are being taught how to live better, how to see the future ahead, and knowing that one day we will die, and then somebody will be saying something about us. You can write the script of your life. You can write how the story ends. You are writing the story right now. Every day you wake up, you're writing your life story. And if you are in control of writing the story, how does the script end? And so, at the funeral we will hear how nice this person was. At the funeral service, people remember. But next time you go to a funeral, next time you see death, just don't think about the person who's died, or the person who has died, or their loved one. But think about yourself and what lessons you can learn in how you can best live your life so that your date of death is better than the day you were born. That's the lesson of Ecclesiastes. Plan with the end in mind. So today, brothers and sisters, don't expect that life will always be a bed of roses. Visit the house of mourning sometimes. Learn the lessons from life. Do not let the suffering go to waste, but embrace whatever God allows to happen to you. And know that those who mourn, those who go through pain, that one day God is going to come and He is going to put an end towards the suffering. He will come and He will wipe all tears away from our eyes, and there will be no more pain, no more suffering, no more death. And Jesus will be able to say, "Oh death, where is your sting? Oh grave, where is your victory?" Because God is going to come and He will put an end to all of that. But in the meantime, brothers and sisters, let death teach us how to live. How to live. And we embrace it, and we thank God for the blessings of pain. We thank God for the blessings of sorrow. We thank God for all that He allowed to happen to us, because our suffering are not in vain. They are there to teach us valuable lessons. Are you willing today to learn the lessons from death?